You're probably thinking, what on earth does Donald Trump wanting a Nobel Prize have to do with India's foreign policy? Well, it might sound random, but stick with me because we're going to connect those dots and it reveals something huge about how the world is changing.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with Trump and that Nobel Prize. Then we'll pivot to India's new playbook on the world stage. We'll see it in action in a really tense situation between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and then look at how India's juggling the big superpowers. And believe it or not, we're going to wrap it all up by talking about the tech right there on your phone. Let's get into it.
So, first up, let's talk about Donald Trump and his very public push for the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, it was all over the news, right? But here's the thing. The real story isn't about whether he won or lost. The real story is about who decided to say absolutely nothing. And that silence, it tells us so much about where the world is heading. Which leads us to this big question, right? Why didn't India back Trump's bid? And the answer to that simple question, well, it cracks open this huge story about a massive geopolitical shift that's happening kind of quietly under the surface.
I mean, it's pretty wild when you look at who did nominate him. You had leaders from Israel, Pakistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, even Vladimir Putin threw his hat in the ring for Trump. People were writing these long letters explaining why he should get it. It was a really strange and frankly surprising group of supporters.
But while all these people were making noise, two giants were completely silent. We're talking about the leaders of China and India, Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi. And let's be clear, this wasn't some accident, like they forgot to send an email. This was a calculated, powerful statement.
And you have to understand, for Trump, this was personal. You can see it in this quote about Barack Obama. Obama won a Nobel, and Trump clearly saw this as a way to one-up him. So this wasn't just about geopolitics, it was about rivalry. It was about trying to outdo his predecessor on the world stage, which just adds a whole other layer to this story. Okay, so back to India's silence. Why do we keep talking about it? Because it was about so much more than just the Nobel Prize. It was India basically putting a flag in the ground, signaling a whole new way of doing things, a new, much more assertive foreign policy that's all about putting India first. Yeah, this is a whole new playbook led by their external affairs minister, S. Jaishankar. For decades, India's whole thing was non-alignment, basically staying neutral. But that's out the window. Now it's all about multi-alignment. Think of it this way. Instead of not picking a team, India is playing on all the teams, but only for its own benefit. They're making deals with everyone and refusing to be pressured into choosing just one side. And this quote from Jaishankar, it sums it up perfectly. When people ask him, which side are you on, he basically says, you tell me. It's kind of sarcastic, right? It's a total shutdown of that old school thinking that you have to be either with the US or with Russia or China. The message is loud and clear. India chooses India. Period.
Okay, so is this just a bunch of fancy talk? Absolutely not. And we can see this new policy getting a major test right now in a super tense situation brewing right next door between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Things got really heated with this threat from a Pakistani minister. He basically said enough is enough and threatened to go into Afghanistan to hit militant targets. I mean, he was openly talking about cross-border strikes and didn't seem too concerned about who might get caught in the crossfire. And then, just days after he said that, boom, a series of bombs went off in Kabul. The threat didn't just stay a threat. It looked like it became a tragic reality. So what does India do? Did they sit back and watch? Nope. They jump right in with two really smart moves. First, they reopen their embassy in Kabul after 4 years. That's a huge deal. It sends a message of stability and partnership. Second, they come out and condemn cross-border terrorism. Now, you don't have to be a genius to figure out who that was aimed at. It was a direct shot at Pakistan and a clear show of support for Afghanistan. This is that multi-alignment in action.
And this new, confident approach isn't just for its neighbors. India is taking this same energy to the global stage, completely redefining how it deals with the big players like the US, the UK, and Russia. It's like a high-stakes chess game.
And just look at the difference here. The US seems to be playing hardball, hitting India with tariffs over its ties to Russia, and at the same time signing defense deals with Pakistan, India's biggest rival. Meanwhile, the UK is doing the exact opposite. They're basically rolling out their red carpet, desperate for a major trade partner after Brexit. It's a classic case of carrot and stick.
Now, let's talk Russia. India's trade with them is growing, sure, about $69 billion. But look at China, $220 billion. It's not even close. And here's the real problem for India. A huge chunk of that trade is just oil. It's not a deep, diversified relationship like China has. That makes India's position a little shaky. It's a bit of a vulnerability.
And this is super interesting. To get around some of the pressure, India has started paying for some of that Russian oil in Chinese yuan, not US dollars. That's a big move away from the dollar being the king of all currencies. But it also tells you something else. They're not using their own currency, the rupee. It shows the rupee isn't quite ready for the global stage, which is a big challenge for them moving forward.
Okay, so we've been talking about all this high-level geopolitical stuff, but why should you care? Well, because this entire strategy, this push for India to be independent, is having a direct impact on something you probably use every single day, the apps on your phone.
Let's take this company, Zoho. They're an Indian software company, and they're becoming the perfect example of this India-first idea, but in the tech world. It's not just a small thing either. We're talking about top government officials very publicly ditching things like Gmail and switching to Zoho's services. That sends a massive signal. India is serious about building its own tech ecosystem.
And it's not just the government. The people are getting behind it too. Zoho has a messaging app called Aradai. Get this. It already has 7.5 million downloads. And that's for an app that's still playing catch-up on features compared to the big guys. It just goes to show you there's a real hunger for homegrown technology.
So that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? If global politics can influence everything from who gets nominated for a Peace Prize to the apps we download, what else can it change in our day-to-day lives? It really seems like the next major global power struggle might not be fought with armies, but with the technology that's right in the palm of your hand.